The Awakening of the Chosen. Welcome to The Awakening of the Chosen. I'm Gabriel. In the next few seconds, we will reveal a truth that few have dared to see: the impact of divine justice. As adverse forces move silently, trying to control, they find that every step taken against you returns with the inevitable weight of their own actions. God, with infinite attention, watches and protects, ensuring that no attempt against you is ignored. If this resonates within you, hit subscribe and discover what it means to walk under divine protection, while those who once scoffed now face the impact of their own choices. This video is not just a message, it is proof that the truth always finds its way back. Let's move on. They think that anything but you could believe that they dominated the industry and that we would all be sold out. But now they repent so deeply that they experience the wrath of God in ways you can't even imagine. And God is doing it via you when the demons see you. They now trap you and are looking for a place to cover their intoxicating scent. Look, and sooner or later your voice has changed. If what I am announcing resonates with you, rewind a little, and at the same time the video is playing, comment, "Me, I awoke." Within the feedback, God has been silently watching each adventure. You face every word spoken to you and every move made against you. Currently, an unpredictable transformation is happening. The people who intend to crush you find that your steps and decisions beyond are returning to them like a boomerang. Now, not even a moment was overcome without God's attention upon you. Every action, every intervention, and every attack on your purpose was before your eyes. The individuals who stand in your direction made the mistake of thinking they could change the path God has set for you, even though it is actually the foundation of your life. Plans are buried in their own weaknesses. What they have not understood is that you have been set apart and guarded with the help of an invisible divine energy, with a sacred task and motive. Your enemies have marched forward arrogantly, believing they can dominate you with their personal power. The traps backfired, dragging them into the same ditches they dug. This delight gave them a false sense of protection, making them accept it as true, as they can alternate their target, block their direction, and make him powerless. No matter how long God waits for each of his, they move to result in profound justice. And while the moment arrived, this justice silently took root and acted. Although their inner turmoil did not come to the surface, they felt the bloodless breath of destruction on their necks. The foundations they believed in are crumbling like a pier. Against a present strong day, every step, every intervention comes back to them like a storm. They are susceptible before the righteousness of God, without a shield to protect them, nor a shadow to cover. If you accept as true in God, now rewind this video a little, and while the video is playing, comment, "I believe God," in the feedback when your enemies who once thought themselves powerful are actually being drawn deeper into an inescapable labyrinth. With every flow they take, every step they take is no longer their free will, but an inevitable link in the fate that circles back to them. Their own voices are lost within the echoing void, unable to reach their own thoughts or plans. Every move they once directed against you currently spirals them with invisible bonds, dragging them into the heart of the dark future that they prepared. The shade they wanted to create first of all, built more effectively to weaken you. Now they have collapsed in on themselves, pulling each one into a dark vortex. This darkness wraps around their necks as an inevitable fact. Everything they avoid with their eyes closed is now clearer and heavier. Before their eyes, time is slipping away from them like sand through their arms, leaving them and not using a space to run away or shadow to hide the power they thought they got, is slipping through their fingers like grains of sand, and the plans drawn up. What they have built is coming undone and destined to fall apart with every knot they tie. Every move they make is coming back to them as a new knot, a new pivot point, no matter how hard they fight to restore balance. Every step similarly buries them in the depths of their personal traps. Amidst all this chaos, their despair increases. As they look for ways to escape, they drag themselves, and also to the God's intervention is becoming even more obvious. As a typhoon approaching, this superwave no longer exposes them effectively. but also brings all the intentions and secrets they hid in the afterlife down to the ground. One by one, leaving no area to hide, the shadow of God's justice wanders around every corner. Their enemies now experience the presence of this justice close at hand. With every step they take, the worry within them grows with each new move, step by step, ingesting your inner peace and wish that the moves your enemies use to harm you have ignited sparks that drag them to their own destruction. Under unshakable protection, surrounded by the grace of God, you need to never fall. Divine justice supervises everything and nothing escapes his vision. What you see is not just their failure, it is undeniable proof of their unshakable and irrefutable calling. You have been overtaken by the innermost waters of pain, the concept of your enemies. They are using you to destroy, taking your sources of nests and loved ones. They celebrated their profits believing they had defeated you, assured of their success and boasting of their defeat. But this arrogance laid the inspiration for their personal downfall. Nothing they took from you became theirs, and now the remains of your power are being beaten in the domain of divine justice. Those who once declared victory with hope now see everything they imagined slipping away. You are not normal. Your lifestyle has disturbed their peace, and your will has broken their arrogance as your slight shakes their insides with the moment you resist harms their plans. But what they don't see is that even as they tried to take away everything that belonged to you, your peace and honor, they were preparing their own exit. Every annoyance you face now has not escaped. You no longer feel forgotten. They think they were destroying you, but every step they took was sincerely a step closer to their own destruction. The pain you feel is not just a wound from the past years. Some deep scars return to their childhood. The wounds inflicted by people who denied their love or broke their agreement with the seeds of hatred they once sowed mercilessly were waiting silently now. After a long wait, the effects of their movements have ripened the ground. They thought they had tornado safe is slowly slipping out from under your foot. They underestimated their struggles, but now their luck, the pleasures they took from their pains and the power they flaunted, have become a trap from which they cannot escape. Every move they have accumulated over the years is crumbling upon them like an irreversible whirlpool. Everything that made you feel comfortable is now the chain that binds you as you stand firmly, finding peace in God's guiding hand. Your enemies are writhing after your movements. Everything they took from you will be returned to you more than enough. Through the hand of God's justice, individuals who consider themselves invincible now face the wrath of an energy they never expected. Despair and troubles weigh upon them even as confusion and inner captivity resonate in their minds, both the inner worlds. As the minds of their enemies are silently crumbling under the shadow of their movements, their days are filled with the echoes of the conspiracies they have secretly created, filled with shattered ideals and the terrible experience of uncertainty they tremble upon as they fall to the internet. Their personal traps. The future they once tried to rule now provides them with a new, harsh, and surprising test. In the depths of their physical ailments, their spirits are also fading with every breath they take, indicating the restlessness within them. They are aware of the cracks that infiltrate their lives, but stopping these fractures is now not in their hands. Their lack of energy becomes an inevitable fact. No matter which path they take, they cannot break the heavy hand of justice. Those who once stood in their way, trusted together, planned, possibly visible, as comrades are actually unwittingly caught up in these divine improvements. Internet people who thought they could stay hidden in the shadows, believing they formed a sneaky partnership even with a small contribution, now find themselves in the midst of this collapse. They might have thought who could live behind the curtain, but now, every step they take and every moment they remain silent makes them part of this vortex. Now they are not the best of his enemies, but also the people who silently support Ed. They are Face's family members who previously acted confidently, perhaps friends, classmates, or even family collaborators who turned their backs on you, are being swept away by this typhoon. Even those who chose to remain in the dark must now face the cruel reality of moderately hidden partnerships. Sneaky ties and unspoken phrases are now being revealed separately. The safe ground they trusted is unexpectedly slipping beneath them in this dark recreation. The secrets and techniques they have stored up for years, the tranquility they imagined could protect them, has become more fragmented by the day. Then the individuals who supported them begin to feel a hidden restlessness. Within you, that little doubt will turn into deep remorse and worry. Silent participants, imagining that they were outside the chain of occasions. Now discover how to locate yourself in the center of the unfolding events. Your lives are being swept away, using the effective winds of chaos that they supported. Everything unfolds, not as they had deliberated, but according to the ruthless plans of fate. At this moment, each of them has to show themselves inwardly and face regrets. The friendships, alliances, and transitory gains that they once trusted and surrounded themselves with are slipping away. Pulling away one by one, the bloodless face of disintegration forces them to confront the dark secrets and techniques within their inner worlds, causing every brick they have built to begin to crack and shift. The hidden darkness within all of us is discovered in the light of this divine justice. Leaving them and not using a place to cover this divine intervention that spreads to every corner destroys their lives, bringing to the surface every movement that they never thought to reflect or question. Even people who hid behind the shadows can't save themselves from being swept away by it. Fantastic wave of the wind of divine justice allows no one to hide every corner. Every hidden point confronts them with reality after they appear again behind the lost. They consider loyalty broken and alliances destroyed. They discover the simplest remorse and a dark emptiness at the same time. God unites the immutable fact. Everyone faces their personal role. There is no longer a place to escape. There is no peace. Hiding in the shadows, the enemies would possibly have acted freely, believing that their movements could in no way recover and they would not pay the tax. But now the roots of their suffering is hitting them in the face, and the shadow of the past is reflecting on their days. Alongside their physical decline, their mental balance is also in turmoil, and they could not deny the connection between their downfall and the harm they once inflicted on them. Others, an inexplicable defense surrounds you. They are writhing in their own flaws, too susceptible to attack you because the gears of their personal traps swallow them. Their life is being watched with the help of a divine protection. Their enemies may assume that are perfectly executed their plans to overthrow him, but God carried him to the furthest point, saving him from all this evil. At the same time, they believe they are witnessing the exhaustion of his power as his attacks approach. None. The door of victory opened to make them fall into its traps was by no means their destiny. God has multiplied you to a safe position, keeping your enemies out of reach as they approach with warlike intentions. All your evil tools are neutralized. Every step they take with their weapons makes your energy for dirt disappear before your eyes. What your enemies fail to realize is that every attack they face does not weaken you but purifies you. Moreover, every deception, every bait strengthens your inner power. People who were destined to fall witness you become rising once again with a mysterious power that they hold to plummet uncontrollably as you reach an unimaginable level. Your enemies watch the loss of electricity and slip from your hands, wandering in uncertainty, lost in their own fight. They resemble shadows that have lost their way, unable to perceive what they may be chasing long-lost time. Now they keep trying to find the final traces of you, believing they can reach you again in the future. But God has kept you completely away from them. For them, there is still a risk of victory regardless of how you are striving in vain. Every step they take results only in further failures. You have been transferred to an inaccessible region. All they have is anger at not being able to locate you. As they struggle in search of the unimaginable, they fail to realize that electricity is escaping from them. You, as a chosen individual, were not only protected, but also exalted. The electricity they once realized they had over you is now ineffective as their structures crumble. They bear the weight of their personal downfall. Defeat stealthily prosecutes their enemies, unwittingly dragging them towards an abyss. Their attempts to behave in opposition to you are more effective in propelling your personal collapse on this path surrounded by a divine light. You walk in safety. Your enemies' paths are tangled like a labyrinth. Every step they take makes them move away from their own traps, until if they insist on fighting with the power of their hearts, the end results are inevitable. Every effort is doomed to fade into the shadows because you preserve meaning in God's eyes. The most practical element promised to them is failure, conflict. It is already above the strength of God that slowly consumes and wears down your enemies' efforts under this sacred protection. They disintegrate into rage and chaos as you pass on. Your enemies are being drawn into a growing pain. Vortex, as they pursue a dark cause, they look for you in places that before inhabited, trying to tune your lines. However, it is a futile effort due to the fact that God has granted you secrecy. Your eyes are blind. Your plans have become internal destruction, completely blocking your intellectual paths. Your thoughts are frozen under the weight of judgment. Those minds, once changing with a clear reason, now spin in a blind loop within their own chaos. Instead of coming out of the status, they are lost in their personal darkness. You are the best obstacle they face. The selected one rewinds a part of the video, and while the video is game observation, I am able to avoid them within the feedback in a blind desolation. As if everything is covered in a blurry fog, they are being dragged absolutely aimlessly and desperately. With every step they take, they lose a little more, sinking deeper into a dark sea that deepens with every passing second. They don't know why they are moving forward or where they are walking in the chaos they have created. They sink deeper with every second. People who once conspired against you with intricate plans in that are currently chained by themselves. Chains of those plans they created with their own fingers. They have no impact on you while God raises you to freedom. He completely erases the false order they built upon you in those dark lands on a chaotic and inevitable battlefield. They wander alone in every corner, every shadow, trap fence. The pits they dug with their own fingers have now become cages that imprison them. Every flow they make makes them feel a little more the weight of previous mistakes and drags them deeper into the field, which thus, what idea they have mastered, they now pay simpler attention. The echoes of what they have lost filed away with helplessness and fear. God's decree hangs over them like a great and inevitable burden. They under this decree are being crushed, unable to understand, see, or confront the results of their own mistakes, as they were lulled into the intoxication of victory. The power they thought they held was slipping from their hands, not knowing they would become nothing more than Chaz dealing with an empty preference. Even as they discovered they lost that power, they chose to include the darkness with blind stubbornness, instead of opening their eyes, now that this darkness has become their closest partner, but at the same time, their biggest enemy, while they think that they can see the whole thing and keep all the people under the control that are now left alone and helpless in that darkness. Every step you take, every wrong decision they made in the past, every mistake they made hits them like a cold wind on their faces. There may be no way out of this blind cycle. The absolute justice of God surrounds them firmly, all of them. Vanity inside them, that false self-confidence is melting within the light of this heavy justice, leaving at the bottom only an empty shell. Intellectual chains are being unraveled one after another. Everything they imagined that set them free has become absolutely just a thread that leads them into this darkness. Give up now. Go away. The roots are closed. Every corner, every region of hiding is full of echoes of the choices they made in the past. Even the crowds that once believed in them and that had gathered around them are actually silently dispersing as part of this heavy crumbling, leaving them absolutely fulfilled by myself. God's decree now not only restricts them, but also prevents them from going through the results of their actions. They may not be aware, but suffering from the whole thing like a shadow. They are being dragged away without a trace as they walk the direction you are in, helpless, in an unattainable and unaffected role. Your efforts to discover that you are fueled most simply through satisfaction and anger, but they are not making any progress. They are suffering under the weight of your own mistakes as you try to escape your personal traps. You have moved, though, and they became the lost ones. The security of God has placed you beyond their knowledge, while they remain trapped in a perpetual cycle of failure, pushed with the help of their blind greed. Sometimes you can see them trapped in this vicious cycle, lost as they chase the tensions you left behind. They may be restricted to old reminiscences and faded traces, now wandering deep in the paths you overtook long ago where once they stood, proudly, believing they mastered. Now they are all alone. Even when you are now in a degree, they can never reach it. They may be incorrect, falling and advancing on a route of agony with no way out. God placed you on a protected high ground, while the false order they built upon you was totally erased by Him. In those dark lands on a chaotic and inescapable battlefield, they roam alone every corner. Every shadow traps them around the ditches they dug with their own hands, have now become cages that imprison them. Every move they make makes them feel a little more the burden of their previous mistakes, and drags them deeper into the area they once thought they ruled. They now hear only the echoes of what they lost, filled with helplessness and worry. God's decree hangs over them like a great and inevitable burden. They under this decree are being crushed, unable to recognize, see, or face the results of their own wrong actions after having been filled with the intoxication of victory. The force that they thought they had was slipping through their hands now, not discovering that they had become nothing, but chasing an empty preference. Even if they discovered that they had lost that energy, they chose to embody the darkness with blind stubbornness. Instead of opening their eyes now, this darkness became their closest partner, but at the same time, their greatest enemy. Even though they thought they could see everything and keep everything under control, they are alone and helpless in that darkness. Every step you take, every incorrect choice they made in the afterlife, every mistake they made hits them like a cold wind on their faces. There may be no way out of this blind cycle. Justice firmly surrounds them, all their internal arrogance. That false self-confidence is melting in the light of this heavy justice, leaving at the bottom an empty shell. The mental chains are being unraveled one after another. Everything that they thought freed them has become. There is an absolutely tight thread that leads them to this dark desistance now of escape. The routes are closed at every corner. Every hiding place is filled with echoes of the choices they made in the past. Even the crowds who once believed in them have gathered around them are now silently dispersing as a part of this heavy disintegrate, leaving them absolutely on their own. God's decree no longer restrains them, but also prevents them from suffering the consequences of their movements. They may not be aware, but suffering from everything like a shadow, they are being dragged without. Don't even leave a clue as they walk the route helplessly. You are in an unreachable position, and unaffected their efforts to discover you are more fueled by satisfaction and anger. However, they are no longer making any progress. They are struggling under the weight of their personal mistakes while trying to escape their own traps. Squeeze them. You walked away, and they became the lost ones. God's protection has located you beyond your information, even as they remain trapped in a perpetual cycle of failure, pushed by their blind greed. Every now and then you can see them trapped in this vicious lost cycle, while chasing the traces you left behind them, may be restricted to old memories and faded tracks, now wandering the paths you passed long ago when they believed they dominated the place. But now, they are completely alone. You are now at a level they will never be able to reach. They are inadequate, falling and moving forward on a course of affliction with no way out. God has placed you in a protected high area. These enemies are not just strange faces among them. They are friends, ancients, human beings outside your class and even circle of relatives, participants who once turned their backs on you. The place from which they once mocked you is now crumbling under the reflections on your personal decisions. The burdens of reckoning darkens their minds. They suffer now. It is not easier because of what they did, but also because of the fact that they are drowning in the impasse of no longer finding a solution to what they are experiencing. They consider themselves untouchable, but God's will has humbled them. Every step they take is remodeled as part of God's decree. Their struggles, their own internal chaos and trap are not simpler mental, but also an inevitable end result. They fell into their own traps. They thought they could escape with strength and arrogance now that strength and vanity have turned into something that destroys itself every day. a judgment weighs more about them sinking. They delve deeper into their own inner chaos. You have been elevated to an area that your enemies cannot reach under God's protection. While they are in inner pain, you have received peace from God. Your own choices have no connection whatsoever with you. What they're trying to find isn't always you. Their lives are buried in the destruction they built with their own arms. Harm you. You do not respond in kind. As a separate soul, you have been chosen not to retaliate, but to hope that God's will is to approach the people who want you to hurt with forgiveness, not always because they deserve it, but because the divine will wants to use your enemies by fighting with you. Scattered minds struggling with illnesses and fighting spirits approaching oblivion are struggling on the brink of destruction. Some are on the verge of exhaustion. Their lives are slipping through their hands. But God is granting mercy through your prayers for them. Your prayers can provide them with a gleam of light in the darkness, and perhaps lead them to repentance as a final danger. God offers their suffering, not only as punishment, but also as a gateway to restoration. Despite the fact that they reject the deep meaning of this painful process, they remain on the edge of a cliff. Their prayers are not to verify your mistakes, but rather a call for you to open your eyes and realize the fact that many may be drawn into irreversible consequences, but the particular responsibility given to you gives them the opportunity to create change in their lives. Hearts. God's selection of you for this role is not because they owe you, however, because your prayers have the energy to awaken consciousness in them. Like methods of judgment, your prayers may soften some hearts, possibly beginning a path of redemption. Final for some, with every step they take. Take is before the eyes of God. Every plan, every betrayal, and every malicious phrase is hidden in the depths of the divine focus. God's attention does not forget any element they may have believed that what was left in the past was erased and forgotten with time. God's memory is eternal, and his justice so sharp, the inevitable reckoning now crushes them with all its weight. Everything they forged in darkness turns again into a wave of anger that surrounds them. God's timing is wonderful. His judgment manifests itself as an effective justice that makes it impossible to break through, even when their hearts are hardened. God's judgment finds them and overcomes all human will. The years in which they once felt comfortable were just a postponement in their final fall. Each day that passed, they refused to abandon their mistakes, and their burdens grow heavier. Their defenses holding back their illusions are now crumbling. There is no more neighborhood to flee, no sanctuary from the weight of their movements. Their pain deepens. The rejection of God's mercy seals their fate. Their hearts are hard and resistant, trapping them in a long street of suffering now. With every step they take, they may be in the midst of a typhoon of challenges that they will face with resistance. The strong foundations they once believed in are being uprooted, inflicting uninterrupted collapse as they try to resist. They sink further into the depths of God's judgment. Watching this unfold, you are lifted to a top unreachable by your enemies, path to God's safety. As you push up the power, you see them being dragged to the bottom. End they prepared with their own hands. Their stubborn and unchanging hearts have been chained, surrounded by pain. If they do not do it anymore, the judgment may be sharp and cruel. God's justice is inevitable, and his enemies are learning this truth in ways that could never have learned imagined. Even while you are in victory, the protecting hand of God is upon you. You possess a power somewhat superior to any resistance. The conflict is over. The power of God has scattered your enemy plans and grown to become your efforts for ash. None of your efforts can succeed against the enterprise God has given you. Even as they advance in your own chaos, you walk under the unshakable security of God. Aiming at you no longer negotiates with their helplessness. God has already guaranteed your victory and continues your course with this self-confidence. Every step you take is guided by God. Each obstacle is a reminder of your energy. The fall of your enemies has become inevitable. It is very planned that you can look above your voices and walk for the reason why God directed you toward you. You were chosen in private by God. In this direction cannot be changed by all people. Now is the time to share their stories and the victories you obtained through God's intervention. Your testimony will serve as a sign of God's righteousness. and the protection presented for being selected by giving. I wish others boldly communicate their story. That is evidence of God's victory. Now is not silent, and to reinforce your electricity, add your different message to the display and focus.